My phone buzzed while I was in the middle of a job. A police officer's voice came through, calm but urgent. Sir, you need to get home now. He hesitated, then added, Your wife's friend is in your daughter's room. I can't say more over the phone, but you'll want to see this. Hurry! I let my wrench clatter to the ground, not caring about the curious stares from my crew. My chest felt like it was caving in as I bolted to my pickup and peeled out of the worksite in downtown Cedarville. The officer's words looped in my mind. Your wife's friend is in your daughter's room. What in the world did that mean? Just 20 minutes ago, I was overseeing a crew repairing a storefront on Walnut Avenue, a regular day as a construction foreman. Now, I was weaving through traffic like a man possessed, heading towards something that felt like a punch to the gut. My hands shook on the wheel. I'd had a bad feeling about my wife Karen for a while, maybe a couple of months. But this was a whole new level of wrong. The tired streets of our small Midwest town flashed by. Boarded up shops, sagging fences, a place that looked as worn out as my marriage felt. I'd been fooling myself, thinking we were somehow better than the other couples who'd crashed and burned around here. I swung onto Elm Street and spotted the chaos immediately. 3 cop cars sat in front of my house, their lights flashing lazily. Neighbors were out on their lawns, some holding phones, probably recording for their social media feeds. Old Mrs. Carter from next door was leaning so far over her gate I thought she'd topple. My stomach churned as I parked sloppily in the driveway and sprinted toward the front door. Officer Malone, a guy I remembered from pickup basketball games years ago, stepped in front of me. Mike, hold up, he said, raising his hands. We gotta talk before you go in. Where's my daughter? I barked. Where's Sophie? She's okay, Malone said, his voice steady. She's in her room, the door locked tight. But, Mike, he shifted uncomfortably. Your wife and some guy were in there when we got here. The door was wide open. The ground seemed to shift under me. What do you mean, in there? Malone's face hardened. Neighbors reported a commotion. Yelling, crying. When we arrived, we found your wife and this man in Sophie's bedroom. Your daughter was upset, locked herself in the bathroom off her room. A cold, sharp anger settled in my chest. What were they doing in her room? They weren't hurting her, Malone said quickly. They were arguing, and Sophie got caught in the crossfire. The guy wasn't fully dressed. My vision blurred with rage. I shoved past Malone and stormed into my house. The living room was a mess. Karen sat on the sofa, tears smearing her makeup, playing the damsel for 2 officers. She looked up as I entered, and for a split second, I caught a flicker in her eyes. Not regret, not sorrow, but fear. Mike, this isn't what you think, she started. Where is he? My voice came out like a growl. Upstairs, Officer Reynolds said softly. We're taking statements. I started for the stairs, but Malone grabbed my arm. Mike, don't do anything you'll regret. We've got this under control. Then I saw him, Greg Turner, Karen's colleague from the accounting firm, coming down the stairs, adjusting his tie like he was late for a meeting. His slick hair was out of place, and he had the nerve to look irritated, like I was the problem. Our eyes locked, and he gave me a smug little grin. That's when I snapped. I charged upstairs to Sophie's room and banged on the door. Sophie, honey, it's Dad. You okay? The bathroom door creaked open, and my 15-year-old daughter stepped out, her face streaked with tears. She threw herself into my arms, sobbing. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. Mom and that guy were in my room, arguing about you. He was saying awful stuff. Mom was crying, yelling, and I got scared, so I hid. I held her close, my anger boiling over. What kind of awful stuff? She looked up, her eyes red and puffy. He called you a loser. Said you were too dumb to notice anything. Mom said she felt guilty, but he told her you had it coming. He said... She choked on the words. He said I'd be better off without you. The fury inside me was like nothing I'd ever felt before. This wasn't just about Karen stepping out on me or our marriage crumbling. This creep had been in my daughter's room, trashing her family while she hid, terrified. I kissed Sophie's forehead. Go to your Aunt Linda's, okay? Call her to pick you up. Dad, what are you going to do? She asked, voice trembling. I'm going to take care of this. I walked back downstairs, every pair of eyes in the room locked on me. Karen had stopped her crocodile tears and was watching me like a hawk. Greg leaned against the kitchen island, acting like he owned my house, that same smug look plastered on his face. That's when I made a choice that flipped everything upside down. I strode to the kitchen, yanked open the drawer by the fridge, and pulled out my .38 revolver, the one I kept for emergencies, the one Karen always complained about. The room went quiet as a graveyard. Mike, Malone said, his voice slow and careful. Put the gun down. I didn't aim it at anyone, just held it at my side, but it was enough. Greg's smirk vanished, his face going white as a sheet. Get out of my house, I said, my voice steady as stone. Both of you. Mike, please, Karen tried, her voice shaky. You brought your boyfriend into our daughter's bedroom, I said, my voice rising. You scared Sophie half to death, while you two schemed against me. So I'll say it one more time. Get out. Greg was already inching toward the door, looking like he'd seen a ghost, but he couldn't resist a parting shot. You're unhinged, he muttered. No wonder she's done with you. I lifted the gun, not pointing, just raising it. Greg practically tripped over himself getting out the door. That's when Malone tackled me. Next thing I knew, I was face down on my own living room floor, hands cuffed behind my back, while the neighbors gawked through the windows like they'd bought tickets to a show. Mike Thompson, you're under arrest, Malone said, sounding like he hated every word. As they pulled me up, I saw Karen by the sofa, no longer playing the victim. She was whispering to another officer, and I caught bits of her words. He's always been angry, threatens me all the time. I've been scared for months. Even in cuffs, I had to hand it to her. She was already rewriting the story, painting herself as the innocent one, and me as the bad guy. As they shoved me into the back of the police cruiser, I caught Karen's expression when she thought no one was looking. Not fear, not sadness, but a smug kind of satisfaction, like she'd just won a bet. It hit me like a brick. She'd planned this whole thing. Driving away from my house, I saw the neighbors huddled on their lawns, whispering and pointing. By morning, all of Westfield would be buzzing about how Mike Thompson had pulled a gun on his wife and her lover. They'd already decided I was a loose cannon, dangerous, not worth trusting. The story was being written, and I wasn't the good guy. At the station, they let me call my lawyer, Tom Wheeler. We'd gone to high school together, and he'd helped me set up my construction company a few years back. Mike, what the hell were you thinking? He said, showing up with a tired look on his face. I was thinking some creep was in my daughter's room, talking trash about me while she hid, scared out of her mind, I shot back. Tom rubbed his forehead. That's not how this is going to look in court. You pulled a gun, man. There were witnesses. Karen's already talking to a divorce lawyer. Let me guess. She's saying I'm abusive. Worse, she's saying you're unhinged. This stunt today, it's her main evidence. They kept me in a cell overnight, 12 long hours to stew over how thoroughly I'd been played. Karen hadn't just been cheating. She'd set a trap, and I'd walked right into it. The next morning, they let me go on my own recognizance, but with a restraining order. I couldn't go near my own house, couldn't talk to Karen directly, couldn't even see Sophie without someone watching. In one perfectly staged moment, my wife had turned me into the bad guy in my own life. I drove to a rundown motel on the edge of town, the kind that smells like bleach and regret, and checked into a room with a lumpy mattress. Sitting there, I tried to wrap my head around what to do next. Then my phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. If you want the truth, meet me at the old grain silo. Come alone. I stared at it for a solid minute. Every gut instinct screamed that this was a setup or some kind of con. But what did I have to lose? An hour later, I was standing in the empty lot of the Westfield Grain Co., a crumbling relic from when I was a kid. The place was a ghost of the town's better days, shattered windows, rusted beams, grass poking through cracked pavement. I was about to leave when I heard footsteps crunching behind me. You showed up, a voice said. I turned and saw Jenna Brooks, Karen's younger sister, stepping out of the shadows. I hadn't seen her in years, not since a family fight that got her practically exiled from gatherings. She was 28, with cropped blonde hair and a few more piercings than I remembered. She'd always been the odd one out in the Brooks family, the one who called out their nonsense while everyone else played nice. Jenna, what are you doing here? I asked, confused. Trying to save your sorry butt, looks like, she said, stepping closer. Her eyes were blazing with anger. You got any idea what my sister's cooking up? Besides ruining my life? No. Fill me in. Jenna pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a text thread. The names were blacked out, but I'd know Karen's wordy style anywhere. Phase 1 done. Mike fell for it hook, line, and sinker. Now everyone thinks he's a threat. Another message followed. What about Sophie? The reply, she'll come around once she sees Mike's problem. Kids always pick the parent who seems stable. And the business? That's phase 2. Mike made me co-owner 2 years ago. Once he's labeled unfit, I'm taking it all. It felt like a kick to the chest. She's going after my company too? Oh, it's worse, Jenna said, scrolling to another screenshot, dated a week earlier. Greg thinks Mike might catch on. Should we worry? The response? Mike's clueless. He's too busy working to notice anything. Even if he suspects, he'll never prove it. Another line, what if he gets violent? The reply, perfect. I'll play the terrified wife and take everything. I stood there, letting it sink in. Why are you showing me this? Jenna's voice was sharp. Because I can't stand my family. Their fake tears, their fake concern, the way they act like they're above everyone else. Karen's the worst. She's been looking down on you since the day you two got hitched, Mike. She thinks you're beneath her. So why'd she marry me? Because you had what she wanted. A business, a house, a steady life. But now she's got Greg, who makes bank, and doesn't come home with calluses. She's ready to upgrade. A cold resolve settled over me. How long have you known about the affair? 6 months, Jenna admitted. The plan to take you down? 3 months. I thought about telling you earlier, but I needed proof, and honestly, I wasn't sure you'd buy it. She wasn't wrong. 6 months ago, I thought my marriage was rock solid. I trusted Karen completely. What do you want from me? I asked. Jenna's smile was razor sharp. I want to see my sister's perfect little life go up in flames, and I want to hand you the lighter. Why help me? Because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and because Karen's been screwing over people I care about for years. It's time she got a taste of her own medicine. I looked at this woman, offering to be my partner in a fight I didn't even know I was in. 3 days ago, I was a content husband, with a thriving business and a great kid. Now I was holed up in a motel, facing charges, and plotting against my own wife. What's your plan? I asked. Jenna's grin was fierce. Oh, Mike, I was hoping you'd ask. Over the next hour, she laid it all out. Karen and Greg had been scheming for months, maybe longer. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. Jenna had screenshots, emails, even some voice recordings she'd made when Karen thought she was alone. The evidence painted a clear picture. Karen wasn't just cheating. She'd been working to ruin my reputation, spreading lies about me being controlling and aggressive, building a case to justify leaving me and taking everything I'd built. Jenna kept talking, her voice low and intense. Karen's been siphoning money from your joint accounts, bit by bit, transferring it to a new account Greg opened for her. She's got close to $40,000 tucked away. 40 grand? That was nearly half our savings. And she's been telling folks at her firm that I've been rough with her. Nothing concrete, just enough to plant the idea that I'm a threat. I thought back to how fast the cops bought her story yesterday, how quick the neighbors were to assume I was the problem. That scene at the house wasn't random, was it? I said, piecing it together. She wanted me to lose it. Exactly, Jenna said, nodding. She's got witnesses now to your violent streak. She's building a case for full custody of Sophie and control of your company. The anger in my gut burned hotter than ever. Over my dead body. That's the fire we need, Jenna said, her eyes glinting. But you gotta outsmart her, Mike. Rage won't win this. You need a plan. What's your idea? I asked. Jenna leaned in, her voice sharp. We give my sister exactly what she's got coming. Let's tear her world apart. We spent the next couple of hours plotting in that abandoned lot. Jenna had dirt I'd never have gotten on my own. Family secrets, bank records, and details about Greg that could ruin him. More importantly, she knew how Karen's mind worked. Her biggest flaw is her ego, Jenna said. She thinks she's outsmarted everyone, especially you. She sees you as just a grunt with a hammer. So she's gotten careless. We can use that. How? Step 1. We let Greg's wife in on the secret. Laura Turner's a decent woman, and she doesn't deserve this. Step 2. We get creative. Greg's gunning for a big promotion at his firm. A messy scandal involving cheating and shady money moves could tank his career. I was starting to see the picture. You want to hit him where it hurts. Not just him, Jenna said, her voice cold. I want them both to crash and burn, just like they planned for you. We decided to start with Greg. Karen was cautious, but Greg was cocky, an easier mark. One more thing, Jenna said as we got ready to leave the silo. Sophie doesn't hate you. She's scared and confused, but she's not against you. Karen's been trying to turn her, but it's not sticking. That was the first ray of light I'd felt in days. How do you know? She calls me sometimes, Jenna said. Has for months when she can't talk to Karen. She knows something's off with you two. She's noticed you've been down and Karen's been acting strange. Working late, taking calls in secret. Sophie's sharp. Mike. She sees it. Driving back to the motel, I felt a spark I hadn't in months. Not hope for saving my marriage, that was long gone, but hope I could protect my daughter, my business, and maybe come out of this as more than the bad guy. Karen thought she was playing a master game while I was stuck in the minors. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, I got to work, not swinging a hammer, but plotting revenge. First, I called my crew chief, Pete Larson, and told him I'd be out a few days handling personal stuff. Pete's been with me for years, and I knew he'd keep the jobs running smooth. Then I hit up an electronics store for a burner phone, a small voice recorder, and a few other things I figured might come in handy. After that, I did something I hadn't in ages. I went clothes shopping. Not for work boots, but for something sharp. If I was going up against lawyers and their fancy firms, I needed to look like I belonged. By noon, I was parked outside Turner and Associates, watching Greg's sleek Audi in the lot. Jenna said he usually grabbed lunch around 12:30, and sure enough, he strolled out right on time. I tailed him to Vincenzo's, a ritzy Italian joint downtown. He met a woman there, someone I didn't know, probably another hotshot from his firm. They sat at a window table laughing and chatting like life was perfect. While Greg enjoyed his fancy pasta, I was across the street making a call. Laura Turner, this is Mike Thompson. I think we need to talk about your husband. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, who are you? Someone who knows what Greg's been up to after hours. I've got proof, and I think you deserve to see it. Another pause, longer. What are you saying? Your husband's cheating with my wife. I can show you evidence if you meet me somewhere private. The silence dragged on so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, her voice came through, quiet but steady. Where? We met at a diner across town. Laura was a slim woman in her mid-30s, still in her nurse's scrubs, fresh off a shift at the hospital. Her eyes were puffy, like she'd been crying. I showed her Jenna's screenshots and some photos I'd snapped of Greg's car outside my house, on nights I'd thought he was there for work. Now I know better. Laura stared at the evidence, her face blank. After a long moment, she looked up, eyes wet. How long? At least 6 months, I said. Maybe more. I'm sorry, Laura. I know this is rough. She gave a bitter laugh. You know what's crazy? I had a feeling months ago. He was always working late, hiding his phone, dodging questions. But when I brought it up, he made me feel like I was paranoid. That's what they do, I said. Make us think we're the crazy ones. What's your plan? She asked. I'm going to make sure everyone sees them for who they are. What about you? Laura's face hardened. I'm going to make him regret this. Good, I said, because I've got some ideas. We talked for another hour, laying the groundwork for what came next. Laura's anger was palpable, but she was sharp as a tack. She worked in the hospital's admin office, with access to employee files and schedules. More importantly, she knew Greg's habits, his buddies, his business connections. There's something else, she said as we got ready to leave the diner. Greg's been boasting to his friends about your wife. He thinks it's hilarious that he's taking her from a guy who swings a hammer for a living. The fury sparked again, but I kept it locked down. What's he saying? That she's out of your league, Laura said, her voice tight. That she's finally realized she can do better. He calls you... She paused, uncomfortable. He calls you the brute. I nodded, swallowing the heat in my chest. Thanks for telling me, Laura. When this goes down, and it will, I want you there to see it. That afternoon, I met Jenna at a greasy spoon just outside Westfield to go over our next steps. Laura's in, I told her. She's ready to help. Perfect, Jenna said, sliding a thick envelope across the table. I've been digging too. Inside were financial records. Proof Greg had been funneling money from client accounts to fund his fling with Karen. Hotel stays, fancy dinners, jewelry, all disguised as business expenses. I skimmed the pages. How'd you get your hands on this? Let's just say I know people who know things, Jenna said with a sly grin. Point is, this is straight-up embezzlement. If this gets to the right folks, Greg's done, disbarred, maybe even locked up. And you just stumbled across it? I've been tailing my sister and her sleazeball boyfriend for months, Mike. I told you I needed hard evidence. Now I've got it. We spent the next hour sifting through her haul. It was a goldmine: financial fraud, ethics violations, even breaches of client confidentiality. Greg had been using his position at the firm to show off for Karen, bending rules and cutting corners. Guys like Greg, Jenna said, think they're above the law. Never crosses their mind they could get caught. So what's our move? I asked. Simple, she said. We let him dig his own grave, then yank the shovel away. Our plan was clean and sharp. We'd use Greg's arrogance to trick him into slipping up even more, then expose him in a way that'd torch not just his affair with Karen, but his career and reputation too. One more thing, Jenna said as we left the diner. Tomorrow night's the Westfield Legal Society Gala. Big event, lawyers, judges, city bigwigs, all in one room. So Greg'll be there, schmoozing with his wife, trying to climb the ladder. Exactly, Jenna said, her smile wicked. It would be a real shame if something spoiled his night. I was starting to see why Karen's family kept Jenna at arm's length. She was a force, the kind that made my job site arguments look like kids bickering over toys. What's your plan? I asked. Leave that to me, but I need you to handle something else. Tomorrow afternoon, Karen's meeting her divorce lawyer. You should be there. I've got a restraining order, I reminded her. Can't go near her. You can't go near your house, Jenna corrected. Nothing says you can't be in the same public building as long as you don't talk to her or get too close. I thought it over. What's the point? To shake her up. Karen thinks she's got you on a leash, moping in that motel. If you show up looking sharp and in control, it'll throw her off. And when she's rattled, she'll screw up. Angry people always do. The next day, I put on my new suit and drove to the offices of Hawthorne and Partners, where Karen was meeting her lawyer. I sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes until I saw her car pull in. Karen looked every bit the polished attorney, hair perfect, suit expensive, striding into the building like she owned the world. I waited a few minutes, then followed her inside. The receptionist glanced up as I approached. Can I help you? I'm checking if Mr. Hawthorne has any openings today, I said smoothly. Might need a lawyer. Let me check his schedule, she said, turning to her computer. Just then I caught sight of Karen stepping out of a meeting room, heading for the restroom. Our eyes locked for a split second. Surprise, then anger, then a flicker of something like fear crossed her face before she turned away and disappeared into the bathroom. Mission accomplished. I'm sorry Mr. Hawthorne's booked today, the receptionist said. I can get you in later this week. No worries, I said. I'll try somewhere else. As I headed back to my truck, I saw Karen watching me from the meeting room window. Her lawyer, some gray-haired guy in a pricey suit, was talking, but she wasn't listening. She was staring at me, and for the first time, she looked spooked. Good. That evening, I put on my best shirt and tie and drove to the Westfield Golf Club, where the Legal Society Gala was happening. I didn't have a ticket, but I didn't need one. I just needed to be in the parking lot when things kicked off. I parked with a clear view of the entrance and waited. Around 7:30, cars started rolling in. Lawyers, judges, and local hotshots, all dressed to impress, ready to pat each other on the back. At 8:80, Greg's Audi pulled up to the valet. He stepped out, looking like a movie star in a tailored tux. Laura got out of the passenger side in a sleek blue dress, and for a moment, they looked like a power couple. Unless you knew Greg was a cheating crook, and Laura was ready to bring him down. I watched them head inside, then got out of my truck and followed. The club was all polished wood, leather chairs, and portraits of old money. The Legal Society had taken over the main banquet hall, packed with faces I recognized from local news clips. I strolled to the bar and ordered a soda. The bartender gave me a once-over. I looked decent, but I wasn't one of these suits. Still, he served me without a word. I found a corner where I could watch the room without drawing attention, keeping my eyes on Greg and Laura as they worked the crowd. Greg and Laura were seated near the stage, where he was busy glad-handing and charming the big shots he wanted to impress. He didn't notice Laura slipping away from conversations, moving through the crowd, whispering to various people. I couldn't catch her words from my spot, but the looks on their faces, shock, worry, outrage, told me everything. Jenna was right. Laura was way sharper and more dangerous than Greg ever realized. At 9:00, the gala's formal program kicked off. The head of the Legal Society droned on about integrity and professional duty. Awards were handed out to lawyers who'd supposedly done great things for the community. Greg clapped politely, probably daydreaming about getting his own plaque next year. Then Laura stood up. She walked to the microphone and the society president looked thrown. "Excuse me, ma'am," he started. "This isn't the time." "My name's Laura Turner," she cut in, her voice ringing clear across the hushed room. "My husband Greg is at table 5, and I've got something to tell you all about the kind of lawyer he really is." The place went quiet as a tomb. I could see Greg's face from where I stood. He looked like he'd been sucker punched. "For the last 6 months," Laura went on, calm and steady, "my husband's been cheating with a married woman. He's been siphoning client funds to pay for hotels, dinners, and gifts. He's broken attorney-client privilege by spilling confidential info to impress his girlfriend. And he's bragged to his buddies that rules don't apply to him. The silence was heavy. Lawyers glanced at each other, probably wondering if this was some prank. Laura reached into her clutch and pulled out a stack of papers. I've got bank statements, receipts, and recorded calls to back it up. Copies are going to the state bar and the DA's office Monday morning. Greg finally snapped out of it. Laura, what the hell are you doing? He shouted. She turned to him, her smile cold as ice. I'm doing what you should have done ages ago, telling the truth. Then she walked out. The room erupted. People were talking over each other, some standing to gawk at Greg, others already on their phones. The president tried to calm things down, but it was no use. Greg sat there, pale as a ghost, his career crumbling around him. I finished my soda and slipped out. I'd gotten what I came for. The next morning, I drove to Sophie's school and parked in the lot, waiting for her to come out. I knew Karen would be there to pick her up, and I wanted to see her face when she realized her plan was unraveling. At 3:15, Sophie walked out with her friends, spotted my truck, and ran over. Dad, what are you doing here? Just needed to see you, kiddo, I said. How are you holding up? She glanced around, nervous. I'm okay, but Mom's been acting weird. She keeps asking if you've ever scared me or hurt me. It's creepy. My gut twisted. Karen was still trying to turn Sophie against me, even after last night's disaster. Sophie, no matter what goes down with me and your mom, you're my world. That's never going to change. I know, Dad. I love you too. Her eyes were too serious for a 15-year-old. Are you guys getting a divorce? Before I could answer, Karen's car pulled into the lot. She saw my truck and sped over, her face tight with anger. Sophie sighed. I gotta go. She'll be pissed if I talk to you. Wait, I said, scribbling my motel number on a scrap of paper. If you need me for anything, call this. Okay? She nodded, tucking it away just as Karen got out of her car. Sophie, get in the car now, Karen snapped, her voice like a whip. Sophie obeyed, but shot me a worried look through the window as they drove off. Karen didn't even glance my way, which told me plenty. She'd heard about the gala. She knew her perfect boyfriend was exposed as a crook and a cheat, and she was probably starting to see her plan wasn't going as smoothly as she thought. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. That afternoon, I met Jenna at a coffee shop in downtown Westfield to plan our next move. Greg's toast, she said, sounding pleased. His firm suspended him pending an investigation. Laura drained their joint account this morning and filed for divorce. The state bar is already looking into him. What about Karen? I asked. Now it gets fun, Jenna said. She tried calling Greg a dozen times last night, but he's not picking up. He's too busy trying to save his own hide to care about her. She's also hired a PI to dig up dirt on you and been talking to Sophie's school counselor, trying to paint you as a bad dad. The anger flared, but I kept it in check. What kind of dirt? Anything she can find. Money troubles, drinking, other women. She's desperate, Mike. Her boyfriend's done, her plan's falling apart, and she's starting to lose it. Good, I said. Desperate people make mistakes. Exactly, Jenna said, her grin sharp. Which brings us to our next step. Tomorrow night, Karen's hosting a girls' night at your house with her firm friends. They'll be sipping wine, bad-mouthing their husbands, and probably plotting your downfall. How'd you hear about it? One of her friends, Carla Hayes, can't keep her mouth shut after a couple of drinks. She told her cousin, who told a coworker, who told me. I was starting to see why people overlooked Jenna. She had a network that had put a spy agency to shame. What's our play? You're going to crash their party, not inside the house. That'd break the restraining order. But you'll make sure they know you're watching. You're going to make them sweat, Jenna said, her voice brimming with mischief. Then, we're going to record what they say. When Karen's nervous and a few glasses deep, she spills the truth, and that truth is going to bury her. That night, I drove by my house for the first time since everything went down. It looked smaller, worn out, like it was carrying the weight of our broken life. The grass was overgrown and old newspapers cluttered the porch. I parked across the street, far enough to stay legal, and waited. Around 7, cars started pulling up, Karen's coworkers and friends from the firm. Women who'd smiled at me during office barbecues, acting friendly while probably thinking I wasn't good enough for their star colleague. By 8:00, the party was in full swing. Through the living room windows, I saw them sipping wine, laughing, toasting in my house, while I sat out here like some creep. At 9, I got out of my truck and walked to the edge of my property line, close enough to be seen, but not close enough to break the restraining order. It didn't take long for them to notice. The laughter inside cut off like someone flipped a switch. Faces appeared at the windows. Karen stepped out onto the porch, glaring at me across the yard. "What do you want, Mike?" she shouted. I didn't say a word, just stood there, hands in my pockets, staring at the house I used to call home. "I'm calling the cops," she yelled. "Go ahead," I called back, calm as could be. "Tell them I'm on a public sidewalk, see what they say." Karen stormed back inside and I saw her grab her phone through the window. 5 minutes later, Officer Malone pulled up in his cruiser. "Mike," he said, stepping out, "what are you doing out here?" "Standing on a public street looking at my house," I said, keeping my voice even. He glanced at the house where Karen and her friends were watching. "You know this looks like harassment, right? I'm not on the property. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm just standing here." Malone sighed. "Technically, you're in the clear, Mike. But you're stirring things up. Those women in there? They're freaked out." "They should be," and I said, low enough that he barely caught it. He gave me a hard look. "What's really going on here?" For a second, I thought about spilling it all. The affair, the stolen money, the plan to ruin me and take my business. But Malone was a cop, not my buddy. And cops tend to side with lawyers over guys like me. "Nothing's going on," I said. "Just enjoying my right to stand on a sidewalk." Malone stared at me, then shook his head. "Just don't make my night harder than it needs to be, all right?" He got back in his cruiser and drove off. I stayed another hour, watching the party fizzle. The women inside kept sneaking glances my way, their faces tense. Good. Let them squirm. Finally, I climbed back into my truck and drove off, but not before catching Karen's face in the window. She looked rattled, downright scared. Exactly what I wanted. The next morning, Jenna called, practically buzzing. "It worked," she said. "After you left, the party fell apart fast, but not before Karen had too much wine and started running her mouth." "What did she say?" "According to Carla's cousin, who heard it from Carla, Karen went off about you for an hour. Said you were stalking her, that you might try to torch the house or something crazy. She also trashed Greg, calling him a spineless loser who bailed when things got rough. Said she should have stuck to her original plan." "What plan?" "That's what Carla asked. And Karen, drunk and pissed, spilled it all. How she set you up to look dangerous, how she's been moving money out of your accounts, the whole scheme to take everything you've got." A cold grin spread across my face. "Please tell me someone got it on tape." "Better," Jenna said. "Carla's cousin recorded the call when Carla blabbed about it. We've got Karen admitting to fraud and conspiracy, clear as day. Will it hold up in court?" "Maybe not for a criminal case," Jenna admitted, "but in a divorce, it'll do some damage." We met up that afternoon to listen to the recording. It was everything Jenna promised. Karen's voice, slurred from wine and dripping with venom, laid out how she'd played me. "That dumbass never saw it coming," she said on the tape. "He actually thought I was in love with him. Can you picture me with a guy who comes home covered in dirt and grease?" Her friends laughed, and one said, "So what's next? Greg's done, right?" "Greg's a coward," Karen snapped. "He swore we'd be together, that he'd take care of me. But the second thing got messy, he ran back to his wife. Screw him. I don't need him. I've got this locked down. Mike will be labeled an unfit parent. I'll get Sophie, and I'll take his company. He'll be lucky to keep his toolbox." "What if he pushes back?" another voice asked. Karen's laugh was sharp and mean. "Mike? Push back? He's too broken and stupid to fight. By the time I'm done, he'll be begging for a job at a gas station." Listening to my wife talk about me like I was some pitiful loser she'd been stuck with, burned away, any last shred of love or guilt I had left. She wanted to ruin me? Fine. Let's see who came out on top. "There's more," Jenna said as the recording kept going. "Listen to this." Karen's voice came back. "The best part? Everyone feels sorry for me. Poor Karen, stuck with that angry construction guy. Poor Karen, scared for her life. Poor Karen, just trying to keep her daughter safe. It's perfect." "You're ruthless," one friend said, laughing. "I'm practical," Karen shot back. "Mike had what I wanted, so I took it. Now I don't need him, so I'm done with him. It's just business." The recording went on for another 20 minutes, Karen detailing how she'd manipulated me, the cops, even Sophie to build her story. When it finished, I sat there, quiet, letting it sink in. "Mike," Jenna said softly, "you good?" "I'm better than good," I said, and I meant it. "I'm ready," because now I knew exactly who I was up against. Karen wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a cold, calculated enemy, and I was done playing her game. Karen wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a cold-blooded schemer who'd been playing me for years, so sure of her win that she'd bragged about it to her friends. But she was about to learn what happens When you underestimate a guy like me, a construction worker with nothing left to lose. What's next? I asked Jenna. Her grin was pure venom. We make Karen paranoid. We make her slip up, then we take her down. Over the next week, we kicked off what Jenna called psychological warfare. It started subtly. I had flowers sent to Karen's office with a card that read, "Thinking of you, a friend." She probably thought they were from Greg at first, until she called him and found out he didn't send them. Then I had pizzas delivered to the house every night for a week. Different shops, different times, always paid for up front. When she called to complain, the restaurant just said someone ordered for her address. I'd drive by the house at odd hours, never stopping, just letting her catch a glimpse of my truck. Sometimes I'd park across from her firm, sitting in my cab with a coffee, flipping through a magazine. All legal, but it got under her skin. Jenna's sources said Karen was unraveling, jumpy, on edge. She called the cops 3 more times, but they couldn't touch me since I wasn't breaking the restraining order. She also made a big mistake. She ditched her first divorce lawyer for a hotshot named Victor Ramsey, a guy known for taking on nasty cases. Why is that a bad move? I asked Jenna. Ramsey's pricey, she said. Karen's burning through the cash she siphoned from you on legal fees and PIs. At this rate, she'll be broke soon. What about my company? She's still the co-owner. That's our next target, Jenna said. She signed those co-ownership papers without putting a dime into the business. Under state law, she's just a minority partner with no control. You can lock her out, change the accounts, the locks, everything. She'd have to sue to get access, and she doesn't have the money for that. It was so simple, it was brilliant. I'd been so caught up in the personal betrayal that I hadn't thought about the business angle. Jenna was right. Karen had overreached. The next morning, I rolled into Thompson Construction for the first time in weeks. Pete Larson and the crew were surprised but didn't pry. They just got back to work. I spent the day on the phone with my business lawyer, the bank, and my insurance guy. By evening, Karen's name was off every account and policy. The office locks were changed, and the security codes were updated. Legally, she was still a co-owner, but in practice, she had nothing. It took her less than a day to figure it out. My burner phone rang at 6 a.m., and Karen was screaming on the other end. "You son of a bitch! You can't lock me out of my own company." "It's not yours, Karen," I said calmly. "You never put a cent into it. You're a minority partner with no say. Check the paperwork. I'll sue you into the ground." "With what? You've already blown our savings on lawyers and hotel rooms?" There was a long pause, then her voice dropped, cold and low. "You don't know what I'm capable of, Mike." "Oh, I do," I said. "I've heard the recordings of you bragging to your friends." The line went silent. I could almost hear her panic. "You're bluffing," she said finally. "Am I? Ask Carla Hayes what she told her cousin after your girls' night. Ask if she mentioned recording anything." Her breathing was quick, ragged. "What do you want?" she asked. "Leave me alone. Stop trying to turn Sophie against me. And admit what you did." "Never." "Then we do this the hard way." I hung up and called Jenna right after. "She knows about the recording. She's spooked." "Good," Jenna said. "Scared people do dumb things. Ready for the big move?" "Hit me." "It's time to go nuclear. We make sure everyone in Westfield knows who Karen really is." "You sure?" I asked. "Once we do this, there's no turning back. She'll be done here." I thought of Sophie, scared in her bathroom, while Karen and Greg plotted to ruin me. I thought of the woman I'd loved, calling me a loser to her friends. I'm sure. The nuclear option was easier than I expected. Jenna had a buddy at the Westfield Herald, a gossip writer hungry for dirt on the town's elite. An anonymous tip and a few leaked documents later, the story hit the front page 3 days later. Local attorney implicated in affair and financial misconduct. It didn't name me, but it didn't need to. Everyone knew who Karen Thompson's husband was. The article laid it all out. The affair with Greg, the stolen money, the scheme to destroy me in court, even quotes from her drunken girls' night rant. By noon, it was in regional papers. By night, it was all over local social media. Karen's phone was disconnected by the next day. But I wasn't finished. The following week, I did something I hadn't done since Sophie was little. I went to one of her soccer games. She spotted me in the bleachers and waved, her face lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in months. After the game, she ran over, still in her uniform, sweaty and grinning. "Dad, you came." "Wouldn't miss it, kiddo," I said. "You were awesome out there." She smiled, then glanced around nervously. "Mom said you might not be able to come anymore because of, the divorce and the restraining order." And the stuff people are saying about her. My chest tightened. What are they saying, Sophie? That she lied about you. That she took money. That she... Her eyes welled up. Is it true, Dad? Did Mom do all that? I knelt down to meet her gaze. Sophie, your mom and I have issues that aren't your fault. But I promise you, I love you. And I'll fight for you no matter what, okay? She nodded, tears spilling. I want to live with you, Dad. I don't want to stay with Mom anymore. Before I could answer, I heard Karen's voice behind me. Sophie, step away from him. Now. Karen was storming across the soccer field toward us, her face a mask of rage. She'd lost weight, and her usually flawless hair was a mess, like she was unraveling. Mom, we're just talking, Sophie said, her voice shaky. I said, get away from him, Karen snapped, grabbing Sophie's arm. Sophie yanked back, wincing. You're hurting me. Karen, let her go, I said, standing tall. She's fine. Don't tell me what to do with my daughter. Karen's voice was sharp, drawing eyes from other parents nearby. You have no right to be here. I've got every right, I said, keeping my tone steady. This is a public place, and I'm here to watch my kid play. Your kid? Karen's laugh was bitter. You mean the daughter you abandoned? The one you pulled a gun on? Parents were gathering now, watching the drama unfold. Sophie looked humiliated. I never pulled a gun on Sophie, I said, calm but firm. You know that, Karen. You were there. You saw what really happened. You pulled a gun on me, she shot back. I pulled a gun when I found you and your boyfriend in my daughter's room, scaring her to death while you plotted to ruin me. Want me to tell everyone what you were really up to? Karen's face went white. She glanced at the crowd, realizing they were all ears. Sophie, we're leaving, she said, reaching for Sophie's arm again. Sophie pulled away. No, I'm staying with Dad. Sophie, I heard you, she said, her voice breaking. I heard you and that guy in my room, talking about Dad. You called him stupid, pathetic. You were planning to take everything from him. The crowd went dead quiet. I saw phones come out, probably recording what was shaping up to be Westfield's juiciest public meltdown. Karen looked around, panicked, knowing she'd lost the upper hand. Sophie, you don't understand. I understand you're a liar, Sophie shouted. You never loved Dad. You were just using him. Then my 15-year-old daughter did something that tore me up and filled me with pride all at once. She stepped over to me, grabbed my hand, and said, I'm staying with my dad. Karen stared at us, her face flashing through anger, pain, and maybe a hint of regret. Then she turned and walked off without another word. Watching her go, I realized this wasn't the ending I'd pictured. I wanted justice, maybe even revenge. But seeing my daughter forced to pick a side in front of half the town, that felt empty. Sophie was crying now, the weight of it all crashing down. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make things worse. You didn't, kiddo, I said, pulling her close. You told the truth, that's never wrong. But holding her as she sobbed, I wondered if the truth was worth the cost. Over the next few days, things moved fast. Sophie came to stay with me at the motel, crashing on the pull-out couch while we sorted out what came next. Karen didn't fight it, which said everything about how far she'd fallen. My lawyer, Tom Wheeler, called to say Karen's attorney wanted to settle the divorce fast and quiet. She was offering me full custody of Sophie and most of our assets if I agreed not to press charges for the money she stole. She wants to skip town, Tom explained. Start fresh somewhere else. Her reputation here is shot. I should have felt like I'd won. I had Sophie, my business, my freedom from a woman who never loved me. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt hollow. Sophie noticed. We were eating takeout burgers in the motel room, some old sitcom droning on the TV. Dad, you okay? She asked, muting the screen. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said, just worn out. She turned to me, serious. Can I ask you something? Always. Did you really love Mom? Like, when you got married, was it real, or were you just, I don't know, lonely? The question hit hard. I took a moment to think. I loved her, Sophie. Or at least I loved who I thought she was. But she wasn't that person. Maybe she tried to be for a while, but nobody can fake it forever. Sophie nodded, her eyes sad. I thought you guys had the perfect marriage. You never fought. You always seemed happy. We didn't fight because your mom got her way every time, I said. I thought that's what marriage was, making her happy so I'd be happy. But it didn't work out that way. No, she said softly. It didn't. We sat quiet for a bit, both lost in thought. Dad, Sophie said finally, I'm glad you're fighting for us, even if it's ugly and everyone's talking about it. I'm glad you didn't let her win. You sure? I asked. This hasn't been easy on you. Nothing's easy, she said. But at least it's real now. We're not pretending everything's fine when it's not. I looked at my daughter, really looked, and saw she wasn't the little girl who used to beg for piggyback rides. She was a young woman who got that sometimes you have to fight, even when it's messy. I love you, Sophie. Love you too, Dad. The final showdown came a week later, in the last place I expected, the hardware store. I was grabbing supplies for a job when I ran into Paul and Jeff Brooks, Karen's dad and brother. We'd always gotten along okay, but their faces told me those days were done. Mike, Paul said, his voice like ice, we need to talk. About what? I said, setting down a box of nails. About what you've done to our family. I almost laughed. What have I done? Your daughter wrecked my life, stole my money, and traumatized my kid. But I'm the bad guy? Karen messed up, Jeff said, but you've been cruel, dragging her name through the mud like this. The hardware store was dead quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Paul's face turned red. Watch your mouth, Thompson, he growled. Or what? I shot back, stepping closer. You gonna do something, Paul? We're here to make a deal, Jeff cut in, his voice calmer but tense. Drop the charges, stop talking to the press. Let Karen leave town quietly. In return, we'll make sure Sophie's set. College fund, car, whatever she needs. You're trying to buy me off? I said, almost laughing. You want to pay me to shut up? We want this to end before it gets uglier, Jeff said. I looked at these two men, Karen's father and brother, and it hit me. They genuinely thought she was the victim. In their eyes, I was the bad guy for not fading away quietly. No deal, I said. Mike, be reasonable, Paul started. Reasonable, I snapped, my voice rising. Customers nearby turned to stare. Here's reasonable. Your daughter's a cold-blooded liar who played everyone for years. She stole my money, fed lies to the cops, tried to turn my kid against me, and planned to gut my business. When she got caught, did she own up? No, she doubled down, tried to bury me deeper. You raised a woman who thinks people are pawns, that rules don't apply to her, that she can wreck lives without consequences. Well, guess what? Consequences are here, and she's going to feel every one of them. Paul stepped forward, trying to look tough. You better watch yourself, Thompson. A threat? I said, closing the gap until I was right in his face. He could probably smell the dust on my work jacket. Let me tell you something, old man. I've lost my wife, my home, my reputation. Everything but my daughter. You know what that makes me? Paul took a step back, his confidence slipping. A man with nothing to lose is dangerous. So here's my warning. Stay away from me and Sophie. No calls, no visits, no messages through your buddies. If you come near us, if you mess with my custody, I'll make what happened to Karen look like a friendly note. I turned to go, then paused. Oh, and Paul, tell your daughter if she ever shows her face in Westfield again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who she is. I left them standing there, pale and shaken, and headed for my last loose end. I found Greg Turner at O'Malley's, a rundown bar on the edge of town where people go to disappear. He was slumped at the counter, nursing a bourbon, looking like a man whose life had imploded, which it had. I slid onto the stool beside him and ordered a beer. He glanced over, and I saw fear flash in his eyes. Mike, he said quietly, figured you'd show up eventually. Been waiting for me? I asked. Knew it was coming, he said, staring at his glass. The day you'd come to finish it. I studied him in the dim bar light. He looked rough, older than his late 30s, suit wrinkled, hair a mess, dark circles under his eyes. You look like hell, Greg, he gave a bitter laugh. Feel like it too. I lost my job, my wife, my house. Laura took everything in the divorce. Everything. Good, I said. Guess I had it coming, he muttered, swirling his drink. After a long pause, he said, Yeah, I deserved it. That caught me off guard. I'd come expecting a fight, some smug excuse or blame shifting. But this guy looked genuinely broken. Why'd you do it? I asked. He shrugged, eyes on his glass. Because I could. Because Karen made it easy. Because I thought I was smarter than you, better than you. Thought I deserved what you had. He took a sip. Now I know I was wrong about everything. You want to know the kicker? He went on. I never even loved her. Not like you did. I just liked the idea of taking something from a guy like you. A guy like me, I repeated. What's that mean? Honest, hardworking, the real deal. Everything I faked my way through. He looked at me, his eyes full of self-hatred. I've been a fraud my whole life, Mike. Karen was just the latest con. I should have felt good hearing him admit it, but I just felt drained. What's next for you? Leaving town, he said. Starting over if anyone will hire a disgraced lawyer with a rap sheet for fraud and cheating. He gave another hollow laugh. Maybe I'll try construction. Do something honest for once. It's tough work, I said. Good. Maybe that's what I need. We sat there, two guys who'd torn each other's lives apart, sipping our drinks in silence while the bar hummed around us. Mike, Greg said finally, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I had to say it. I looked at the man who'd helped wreck my marriage and realized I didn't hate him anymore. He was a shell, punished more than I could have managed. Apology accepted, I said. He blinked, surprised. Really? Yeah. You're already done, Greg. There's nothing left for me to do. I finished my beer and stood. As I headed for the door, he called out, Mike, take care of Sophie. I nodded and walked out, leaving him to his bourbon and his regrets. She's a great kid, Greg said, his voice low. Better than either of us deserved. I nodded and stepped out into the cool night air. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Karen had skipped town the day after I faced off with her dad and brother in the hardware store. Nobody knew where she went, and I didn't care. She'd signed over full custody of Sophie, handed me the house and the business, and vanished like she'd never been part of our lives. Sophie and I moved back into the house on Elm Street. It felt strange at first, walking back into the place where it all went down, but we made it ours again. We redid Sophie's room, tossed out most of Karen's stuff, and started piecing together a new life, just the two of us. Sophie was doing better than I could have hoped. Her grades were up, she'd made new friends, and she seemed genuinely happy for the first time in ages. Sometimes she'd ask about her mom, but it wasn't like she missed her. Mom was always performing, she told me one day, while we were painting the kitchen. Like she was in some play, and I had to follow the script. What do you mean? I asked, setting down my roller. I was always afraid of saying the wrong thing, setting her off. But I never knew what had set her off, so I just tried to be perfect all the time. I knew exactly what she meant. I'd spent years tiptoeing around Karen, trying to keep her happy without ever figuring out what happy meant to her. You don't have to be perfect, Sophie, I said. Just be you. I know, she said, smiling. It's nice. The business was booming. Word about Karen's schemes had spread, and instead of tanking my reputation, it boosted it. People respected that I'd stood my ground, fought back. Jobs were pouring in faster than I could handle. Jenna became a fixture in our lives, too. She'd started dating Pete Larson, my crew chief, and the four of us had dinner together most Sundays. Sophie thought Jenna was the coolest, and I had to admit, her sharp tongue and no-nonsense vibe were exactly what our little family needed. You know, Jenna said one Sunday evening, sitting on the porch while Sophie and Pete tossed a frisbee in the yard, I never thanked you. For what? I asked, sipping my beer. Letting you take down your sister? I grinned and she laughed. Kinda. I mean it, though. I'd been waiting years for Karen to overstep, for someone to call her out. You gave me the chance. Worth it? I asked. Jenna thought for a moment. She was always going to be a lousy person, Mike. The only question was whether she'd get away with it or face the music. I'm glad we picked the music. Watching Sophie laugh and run around the yard, I knew Jenna was right. Karen had made her choices long before I caught her with Greg. I didn't start this mess. I just refused to let it bury me. 6 months after the divorce, a letter showed up, forwarded through Tom Wheeler's office, with no return address. I recognized Karen's handwriting immediately. Mike, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I had to write this. I've been in therapy, and my counselor says I need to own what I did to you and Sophie. So here it is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for lying to you for years, for cheating, for stealing your money, for trying to ruin your reputation. I'm sorry for putting Sophie in the middle and hurting her. Most of all, I'm sorry for not valuing what I had. You were a good husband and a great dad, and I threw it away thinking I deserved better. I don't expect forgiveness or a reply. I just needed you to know I see what I did was wrong. Take care of Sophie. She's lucky to have you. Karen. I read it twice, then tucked it into my desk drawer. A few days later, Sophie found it while rummaging for a marker. Is this from Mom? She asked. Yeah, I said. You gonna write back? I thought about it. No, I don't think so. Good, she said, her voice firm. We don't need her anymore. She was right. We had each other, a good life, and a future that was ours to build. Karen was gone, and we were finally free.